Welcome to the podcast. My name is Dave Darmstadler. I'm your co-host and co-CEO and co-founder of DataPath. And my other co-host is here with us, Oren.
I am Oren Potts. I'm Director of Academics for DataPath.
Great. And today we're going to be covering a topic, automation within IT. And we'll have a couple different talking points. One of them is just kind of what is automation and what do you use it for? And then just defining, different types of automation, how you can apply them, to your IT infrastructure and to help your team. So, Oren, as you're seeing, like some of the, school districts where we have thousands of users and devices, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you see as far as benefits, within automation?
So, time savings and headache and error. So, when we look at automation in education, lately, you see it solves a problem. So you have different platforms and different products that all work together. And a lot of times those different products will have different passwords. Well, you can use automation to sync those up to have the same password. Or in education, a traditional setup, a teacher will have to input their grades in multiple systems, which takes a lot of extra time. That can be set up to sync together using automation so they don't have to do that. Marshall, I know we spoke previously about ways you could leverage things like Intune. Can you go into more depth about that?
Yeah, one of my favorite parts about Intune or in Azure is the autopilot feature. And this is a feature that allows you to, when you're procuring the device from your vendor, they'll register the hardware ID of that device into your tenant. So you can ship the device straight to the end user without needing to really touch it, unless you need to slap it with a sticker or something for, inventory purposes. But other than that, you can get it in their hands and they can turn it on, and then the autopilot and Intune policies that apply to that device will start applying as soon as it gets connected to the internet. So you can have custom out-of-box experience. You can assign it directly to the person. So when they're signing in, it already has their email address entered. They just got to connect their password. And it really helps the provisioning of the device and getting all the software that you need. Because Intune these days is an evolution of group policy from the Windows background. You can push software and things like that, and it's all automated, right?
So, Marshall, maybe tell us like a before and after on that, right? So you're rolling out laptops, right? You order 100 laptops, you got to roll out. Let's rewind a little bit. Maybe it was 45 minutes at best. If you're cloning them, maybe it's an hour and a half, right? You've got some image for them. Maybe tell us a little bit about like Intune, right? So you're ordering these, and so if you're ordering them from a vendor, you essentially tag those laptops before they're even shipped, and when they arrive, how long is it taken for those to actually be set up and ready for a user?
5 minutes. I mean, you turn it on and it forces an internet connection and it's ready to go. Now, the variable there will be how long it takes to download and install software in the background and how vast your policies are related around those types of things. But in the past, where if you were lucky enough to have an imaging system set up that you can plug into the network and tell it to install this image, but then all of the work that it takes to go into the background of setting those images up and maintaining them is also a lot of work. I've done it for us internally with the autopilot and Intune and registering our devices, older ones, and then even ones that we order brand new now get done that way. And there's a lot less time that our staff has to take to just get machines set up.
And going back to what you said, Dave, if you're running a lean team, very lean IT team, these things can be powerful, especially even in the education space. When you combine something like Intune, most of the districts that we know of have Windows environment for their staff and a Google environment for their students. When you combine things like Intune and then the way that Google rolls out their Chromebooks, if you procure those Chromebooks with white glove services, which means that they're already set up kind of like Intune in your own tenant, in your own domain, and you can put those into whatever OUs that you would like, you're ready to rock and roll. So those devices get put out, the users log in, and then the policies and the software start getting installed.
It's incredible. So massive time savings for teams.
I was going to say, one of the examples that, I would throw in there for when you talk about time savings too, is it's important for devices themselves these days to have firmware and BIOS updates and things like that. 20 years ago, you only ever had to do that if there was a problem. But these days, you need to be updating your firmware and your BIOS on your end user devices pretty regularly. And one of the things that I did with us internally is I can have Intune identify which machines are of a particular type. So if they're Dell or Lenovo or HP or whatever, and then because of that, they install the proper software that does the drivers and firmware and BIOS updates in the background. So I've scripted all of that. So Dell command update doesn't get installed on an HP. It only gets installed on a Dell. And then during that provisioning, that original out-of-box experience, it'll do all the drivers and firmware in the background. And that saves a ton of time because I don't have to do it.
Marshall, in what ways can an IT team leverage automation in the realm of the network infrastructure space? Like, what kind of information can they get to help them manage and maintain?
We deploy a network of management and monitoring solution specific to networking devices that does a ton of things in terms of being able to communicate to all of the devices on your network. Primarily, we're talking about your infrastructure, though, your managed switches, your routers, your firewalls, and things like that. And what these appliances do is they communicate to them using SNMP protocols, and then also being able to log into them over SSH to pull their configs. It allows them to back the configs up, monitor for changes to configs, and that's all an automated process as long as it has the ability to log in and connect to that device. And then it also has the ability to parse through the configurations, and it helps build a visual network map. That's just one of the key features of that tool. But when you talk about automation too, a lot of automation is driven based off of the ability to monitor for something specific, like an error that alerts, and then that triggers a reaction, whether it's a script to attempt to fix something, things like that. A lot of the software workflow and scripting automation is based off of alerting, monitoring, triggering of an event.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of being on a few demos with our vendor partners with their analytics, and those are powerful tools in how they can collect data and then present that data to the IT teams in a very basic format so they can understand it and attack the problems.
Yeah, that information is really valuable because these tools can monitor utilization of the devices, how much bandwidth is being used by which port, which switch, those types of things, and then display it in a way that makes it easy to troubleshoot devices or just display that active data for how your network is acting in a live environment.
So, Marshall, I know you had some topics you wanted to cover. I'm just curious, where obviously where automation is today. Where do you see automation, in the next year or next 5 years? What do you see being kind of the big leaps that will really bring, a lot of benefits to IT departments and IT leaders?
Well, so from our perspective, or my perspective, a lot of the automation that I deal with on a hands-on perspective is workflow and scripting automation, and workflows in our PSA tool. It helps us internally be more efficient with how we handle customer requests, tickets, where they go on the boards, how they get assigned, stuff that you don't have to manually click on. It can just identify that this is what this type of ticket is and move it to the right person in a fairly quick manner, right? You eliminate human error and things like that. And that's examples of workflow. And in the scripting automation is things like we need to deploy our security tool software to 10,000 machines. You write the script to identify or to do the installation, but then you also set up alerting and monitoring. So you talk to a machine, find out if it has that software or not. If it doesn't, then the system knows to run the script to do the installation of the software. And I've done that for tons of different applications that we have. And the same thing is the reverse. If we need to remove a software, identify that the software is installed, alert on it, execute a script to remove the software. And a lot of that's done through our RMM platform. And that's just one example, but that's a pretty powerful example, because just think about how long it takes to send one person out and have to touch 50 machines to install a piece of software. And we can do it and it's done and nobody even knows it's been done. It's 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
The next wave of automation, and there's lots of different types of automation, but one that I'm really excited about is robotic process automation, or RPA. That's already existed for quite some time, but in industries that they're an assembly line building cars, right, and it's robots doing it and that type of thing. But there's a version of that is coming to the MSP space. And what that's allowing an MSP to do, if you have that platform, is we've got a PSA and we've got an RMM, and we procure things through Tech Data or some other vendor like that, like Microsoft licensing and that type of thing. And then we've got our documentation platform somewhere else. And what the RPA platform does is it allows you to build a playbook. So it's monitoring for a trigger, right? So let's say it's looking in your PSA platform and there's a ticket for a new user. Well, right now, a staff member gets that ticket for a new user, and they've got a document that tells them, hey, for this client, you need to go through and do these 25 steps to get that account ready. Create it, add it to groups, et cetera, what softwares it needs, get a computer set up for them, that type of thing. Procure licensing, Microsoft 365 or whatever. And these RPA platforms, they're connected to all of your tool sets, and then you can build playbooks off of that. So now you're doing automation amongst your tool set, and you have dissimilar systems that are able to communicate through one playbook and get a process completed.
Going back to what you said, Marshall, I think is very important. There's different types of automation. Can you help define what automation is and go over some of those types? I know some of them aren't very commonly known.
Yeah, it's just a tough thing when you hear the word automation. What exactly does that mean? And there's a lot of different areas of automation that can be done. I gave the example earlier, but your thermostat and setting it to monitor for a particular temperature, that's a type of automation. There's probably a lot of people who have types of automation they do every day. They don't even think about it, right? In the MSP world, or in my world, it's workflow automation. It's scripting automation. There's automation that's the Internet of Things, the IoT devices that do things based off of environmental, settings and different things that you're trying to monitor for. And then we talked a little bit about robotic process automation and how there's platforms coming to the MSP space. But that's a type of automation that's been around for, a long time now already, just used in different industries. The cost to the barrier to entry of that type of automation is, usually reserved for, large enterprises and specific scenarios. And then you have your artificial intelligence and your machine learning automations. And so it's important to know that when you just say a blanket statement of automation, that you kind of define what type of automation that you're talking about. Someone comes to you and says, oh, hey, let's automate this. Well, one, does the process even need to be automated, right? You don't apply automation to things that don't need to be automated. But if you're trying to, what is the goal of the automation in general, right? So in all these different types of areas, and those are just some examples of, more common automation technologies that are out there.
Or, you're seeing automation in districts of all sizes, some of them being really large. With the use of automation, what are you seeing the IT teams getting back, and where are they able to apply their time that really makes a difference in the classroom and to the student ultimately?
They're getting back time, and that time that they're getting back, they get to work on higher level issues that are going to have a greater impact on students. So where you see automation play, at least in education, is some of the tedious tasks that they have to take care of. Things like we've discussed, like password resets, syncing together two different platforms for rostering to roll over and flow. So that's not a manual process. That saves a lot of time for those lean IT teams and allows them to work on higher level network infrastructure issues or things that are going to have an impact to way more students.
Oren, as always, it's fun. Marshall, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you, appreciate the work you do, and it's great to work together for a decade now. So looking forward to future conversations, and we will talk to all of you guys next time, and look out for our next podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd love to come back anytime. And it's been quite a ride over the last 10 years. So we'll be in here, and we've done a lot of amazing things in the last 10 years.